Breathing Numbers is actually a journey of a woman who just wanted to unfold the untold stories of the Syrian refugees. It was the 21st of May. I was in my living room in the warmth of my family house, and I was watching the news as I always did since the Syrian war started. And there it was, 100,000. 100,000 killed. 5 million under the poverty line. I remember it was 4.5 million displaced, and the number kept coming. So I realized that day that when I was just about to change the channel, I realized that we got used to the numbers to the extent that we shake our heads in sadness and flip and go back to our normal lives. We kind of forgot that those numbers actually represent human beings and represent people who are very similar to us, to me and you, and lived a very similar life to the life we live now. So I decided on that day that I'm going to start doing something about this. I'm going to try to save whatever is left from my humanity on that day. And the best thing I know is to actually tell a story. Tell a story to change and turn those numbers that we see on TV and in the news from the static nature that they have to numbers that have a life, numbers that breathe like the people they represent. So on the 22nd of May, 2013, I pick up and go. I booked the first ticket, and I decided to go and seek the Syrian refugees in Jordan, and I tried to get to the Syrian refugee camp in the Zatari area. I'm not a photographer. I never even used the camera up to that point. I'm not a journalist, and I'm definitely not a director. So I went to the market and I bought the most expensive camera I can afford then, and tried to figure out how to use it. Off to Jordan. But seriously, I told this story of breathing numbers time after time, and this is not really what I want to be talking about today. When I started this journey, I wanted to tell the stories of Syrian refugees. And I think I owe it to this project and to the Syrian and the families I met that I start doing that in platforms such as today's event. So bear with me. I'll disappear for a moment. I want you to forget that I exist on this stage. I want you to focus on the screen behind me. Listen maybe to my voice and the voices of Syrian refugees telling their stories to you. And what I want you to come out from this experience with is your decision of what's next. If you listen to those stories and it affects you, then I want you to decide what will you do about it.
يتفرجوا على سوريا، ينقذوا شعب سوريا اللي عم يتقتل، العالم اللي عم تموت. تتحرك الأمم، تتحرك العالم كله، الدول كلها تتحرك. هذا اللي بحكيه. ليش عم يستنوا هيك ليصير فينا أكثر من هيك؟ كل يوم عم يموت ملايين، عم تموت وإحنا عم نتفرج عليهم. هذا اللي بحكي للعالم، تتحرك العالم، يوقفوه، يشيلوه، اللي بدهم إياه يعملوه فيه. المهم الدم يوقف، النزيف يوقف. ذبح العالم، ذبح، ما خلى حدا. وبطلع وليد المعلم على التلفزيون بيقول هاي مجموعة إرهابية، مجموعة إرهابية، عم يقتلوا يذبح مجموعة إرهابية. الله يهدوا إن شاء الله، الله يهدوا، الله يهدوا يا رب، يا رب. حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل بي، حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل بي. لو تشوفي منظر هالقطافيل وهي شي راس ما في راس، شي ما في ايدين، شي ما في جرين. بنتي شقفتين طلعوها، بنتي مجموعة إرهابية. هاي شو بتعرف بالإرهاب؟ عمرها 12 سنة، شو بتعرف بالإرهاب؟ شو بتعرف بالإرهاب؟ خلي العالم كله يسمع، خلي كل الناس تسمع.
احنا ولا عملنا شيء، بس هيك الصاروخ اجى من بشار.
اسمي فجر يحيى جراد، عمري 10. بحب ارجع سوريا.
بقول له انت قتلت الاطفال والظلم لجويده، بس راح يلي راح وظل يلي ظل.
اسمي ضحى وعمري 10، حابة ارجع سوريا.
نطلب منه نخلص منه بس.
Malik, he's 6 years old. The first time we saw him, he was in the Zaatari refugee camp. He had a big diaper surrounding his middle. Malik was injured under shelling in Syria, back in Syria, and they found him with all his insides out. He couldn't walk, he couldn't live a normal life, he couldn't go to the toilet, and he barely can eat. Maryam has an interesting story. In my second trip to the Zaatari camp in Jordan, a friend of mine called me and said, there's this kid, she has cancer, and it's putting her life in danger. I tried to reach Maryam and her family, but I couldn't. I tried so many times, it wasn't successful. And then one time I went to the refugee camp doing like normal visits around and checking different tents and different caravans and families around. And I saw this one tent, and I told my friends there, the people who I work with, let's go inside, let's check how this family is doing. And we did go inside. And when we were having a conversation, I discovered that the child that was in front of me was actually the child I was looking for a long time. And as if it was from God that He brought them to me, not me to them. Maryam had one eye removed because of cancer, and we had to remove the second eye because of cancer as well. If we did not interfere, Maryam could have lost her life. Ghazal, one of the most beautiful kids you'd ever meet in your life. Ghazal is deaf. She wears a pacemaker, so she has heart problems. And she didn't really have any support when we first met her. She didn't get her medication. She didn't have any education. At this point of time, Ghazal has a sponsor who pays for all her medical bills, her education, and now I think she's 7 years old and a cheerful child. This is one of the pictures inside the Zaatari camp. This is actually a house where one of the families live in. And if you see the door at the back, everyone you see in the picture lives inside that one caravan through that door. You see a woman on the ground. She's baking bread and distributing it to the people around, even though they're in tough times, but they don't forget their neighbors. Khalid was a completely normal child. He was like every other child. I believe he was 13 years old. He was in Syria the shelling started, the bombs started coming. And he woke up in the middle of the night, and he was so terrified that he completely blocked. He disconnected any connection to the rest of the world. If you talk to Khalid as if he's not there, you cannot talk to him, he doesn't listen, he cannot hear you, he's in a completely different world. If you look at him, you would think he's a child that was born with a disability. That's a picture from inside the Za'atari camp. Speaks for itself. Labiba lost an eye, also under shelling when she was back in Syria. And when you see her for the first time, you see a child with a hole in her face. And I'm sorry for the tough images and the tough language I'm using today, but you need to know what's happening there. After we met Labiba, we managed to get her what they call a glass eye. And she doesn't see much from her other eye, but every time I go and visit Labiba in their house in Za'atari, she recognizes my voice. And every time I go there, she comes running and hugging. Something I would never trade for anything else in my life. These are the toilets inside the Za'atari camp. It's unusable, you cannot use it. It's not, there's a serious hygiene issue here. And that's why the refugees started creating their own toilets next to their caravans and their tents. This is a lovely, lovely family that I also met. And all of who you see on the slide are sisters. And if you see the 4 sisters around, the little one in the middle, they were back in Syria as well when, again, it started and bombing started. And the first reaction from all the 4 sisters at the same time was to jump on their little sister and protect her from the falling pieces and from harm, basically. And what happened to those 4 sisters, each and every one of them got a different kind of injury, and most of them broken bones. And the one with the hijab, she had a broken back. All 4 of their sisters. I've never seen this kind of love in my life. This child is a daughter of a guy who we call the living dead. He was a normal Syrian citizen, and he was executed in the field, but managed to survive through it somehow. Ammar, who you saw in the video, also under shelling, he lost an arm and a leg, but again, I've never seen a strong child like Ammar is. He speaks from the heart. This little child, her name is Ghazlan, and she was also injured under shelling, very bad injury that almost took her life away. And Mahmoud Sadaqa, he's the guy with her, is a representative of breathing numbers in Jordan. This picture I received from, again, Mahmoud, and it came from a bunch of kids inside a Za'atari camp just before the harsh weather of the winter time in Jordan. And you can see what he's wearing in his feet. And their request was, we created this box, we wrote on it breathing numbers, and we want you guys to help us raise some funds to buy proper shoes for winter time. We did, and they did. Jamal, another 6 years old, he had a very bad injury and back in Syria, and he witnessed his mom being killed in front of his eye. He's one of the toughest cases that I've ever had to deal with. He shows love and hate in the same second when he deals with you. Arjuan, also back in Syria, she lost her mom, all her sisters, all her brothers, her aunts and uncles, all at one go. Now she lives with her grandmother inside a Za'atari camp, and her father is in the intensive care unit. This is a Za'atari camp in wintertime. And this is at night. If you don't have this light in your hand, you cannot walk around. It's completely dark. This guy, he's over 100. And we checked his ID card. and he still lives in very harsh conditions. Whether it's a tent or a caravan, the cold weather in Jordan can kill a person. All of these kids, it was part of one of the campaigns we did, and they all lost their parents. Also back in Syria, they're all orphans. The child with the Robin Hood mask. I met him on the street in Jordan, and immediately recognized that he was a Syrian refugee without even talking to him. And when I started, he's fine. There's no injuries, not with him, not in the family. We created a real strong connection that at this point of time, he considered me as his mom, and he writes messages, actual letters to me. So those are some of the stories around the Syrian refugees. What started as a documentary soon turned into a humanitarian act. At this point of time, we covered more than 500 medical cases. We distributed more than 260 caravans, distributed 3,000 winter cloth pieces, 1,200 blankets, 200 heaters. We have agreements with the Italian hospital in Amman to take any case that comes through us, even if we didn't have enough cash in the account. And the same with another eye hospital. And we continue to try and find creative ways to raise funds and cover whatever case that comes in our way. Having said that, we are not yet an NGO, so we have to be very creative in the ways we raise funds. These are some of the team members that continue to come with us to Jordan and to the refugee camps. These are the kids we continue to help. And I think I want to end it with a video about some of the work we do in the refugee camps in Jordan and in other cities as well around Jordan, like Irbid and Az-Zarqa.